Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla TV, here to talk to you today about Woodcraft frame sliders. You should be looking into a set of Woodcraft frame sliders for your bike because they're probably cheaper than the deductible on your insurance policy. Realistically speaking, you probably want to put some Woodcraft frame sliders on your bike to prevent major damage from occurring in the event of you coming off of your motorcycle. Now, Woodcraft's currently making these for an awful lot of bikes. Use the Bike Finder. We're going to show you the ones that are going to fit your bike specifically. In general, though, these are pretty much tailored to sport bikes. Installation on these things is kind of difficult. You could be edging into the 2 beard category on our BSD, our beard scale of difficulty. Woodcraft doesn't offer no-cut kits. We'll talk about what that means in just a moment, but you should recognize you're going to be chopping some stuff up in order to put these on your bike, most likely. Let's get right into things. So Woodcraft is making frame sliders. They're making all sorts of stuff for lots of bikes, but frame sliders is a particularly saturated market. There's lots and lots of brands out there, but Woodcraft still manages to come out with a product that's a little bit different than some other stuff as long as you understand their construction technique and philosophy. So there's a couple things I really like about the Woodcraft frame sliders. The first is, as I had said, they don't offer a no-cut kit. And what that means is Woodcraft is attaching their frame sliders directly to engine mount bolts. What that means is they're unwilling to compromise on the position of the mount. They know that getting an engine mount bolt is really going to be the most secure way to spread crash load throughout your frame without injuring your motorcycle. There's other brands out there that'll use a cantilevered style mount. The problem is sometimes those can bend in a crash themselves, and oftentimes they do more damage than they would have protected had there been nothing there at all. So keep that in mind. The fact that Woodcraft is not offering a no-cut kit is not to make your life difficult, but instead they're actually trying to make sure that these sliders do exactly what it was that they were designed to do. So the other thing I think is very interesting too, Woodcraft has a couple features that set them apart from the competition. I want to show you one of them really briefly here. Let's pick up this slider here and I'll show you the assembled version. You'll notice that the puck on here actually is not fastened axially through the puck. Instead, it's perpendicular. It mounts perpendicularly to the actual puck itself. This allows you typically, in a lot of cases, to replace a slider with a little bit more ease than one that does have a bolt running through. So oftentimes you can sneak a fresh puck onto there a little bit more easily than having to run through here with a bolt. That can be kind of important. So for those of you who are considering, again, installing some of these, but you don't know really how great you're going to be at the installation, note that if you have a puck that does mount like this, it's going to be a little bit easier to install these later if you do wind up tipping over and need to replace your slider pucks themselves. So one of the other things I also really like about Woodcraft is that they are, again, thinking about bike crash protection, but they also offer some options in terms of replacement slider pucks. So I want to direct your attention down here. So when I talk about options, you've got a couple different options. So here's a replacement Delrin puck like the other ones you see up here, but you'll notice there's a little bit of a height difference here. The reason Woodcraft is offering these is so that people can choose exactly how much stick out they want with their slider. Now, if we operate under the assumption that we want a bike to fall down and then slide smoothly across the pavement without damaging anything in the event of a slide, that means that typically a shorter slider like this one is going to do a little bit better in that scenario. And the reason it's going to perform a little bit better is because it doesn't stick off as far. It's not going to help lever the bike up and allow it to start tumbling end over end or perhaps barrel rolling. Whereas a longer slider like this one with a little bit greater stick out might save you a little bit more in terms of a low speed or a driveway tip over or crash. It'll save your plastics, but it might be a little bit harder in a crash scenario. Nobody really knows exactly how they're going to crash, but there are some people who know that they're prone to one type or another of accident. So Woodcraft offering different lengths here really does make them a standout. I can't think of many other brands that do that. The other thing I really like too is they also offer different materials. This is not a plastic-based slider. This is actually aluminum. They're one of the only companies that is offering aluminum pucks. I personally don't know that I would use them, but I know a lot of you guys are throwing these on your bike, not necessarily so much for crash protection, but because you want them to look cool. If that's who you are and what you're doing with your bike, there really aren't that many other alternatives if you want a nice anodized aluminum slider puck to kind of give your bike a little bit of that pop and bling factor. So let's get into installation here. As I had mentioned, most of these are going to ring in around the 2 beard category in our beard scale of difficulty. And I say that specifically because, again, these are no-cut sliders. With the exception of something like the Diavel kit you can see over here, these aren't going to bolt right on. You're going to have to remove some plastics, and in many cases, you're actually going to have to cut your plastics. It's not terribly difficult if you've never done it before, but you do need some tools tools. You need a couple of specialty pieces, and you also need some basic hand tools. Removing the plastics is fairly easy, but as far as actually getting your holes in the plastic, you're of course going to need a drill, and then I'd also recommend too a fine-tooth hole saw along with some painter's tape. It'll help to keep your nice plastics looking nice throughout the installation process. Still though, that added complexity is what I would say bumps this up into the two-beard category. Now when it comes right down to it, I really like these Woodcraft frame sliders. We have a couple guys here who race at RevZilla who swear by these things, and I'm more than willing to take their opinion. These are the things to use. However, our opinion is not the only one out there. Click that info button. Check out what some other riders who have rocked a set of Woodcraft frame sliders on their bike have to say about them. If you've got a question that I didn't cover, perhaps something about fitment or installation, feel free to get in touch with one of our gear geeks, 877-792-9455, or you can always get us by email too, cs@revzilla.com. I'm Lemmy, I'm out of here.